My wife slid divorce papers across my dining table with a smile. Not a nervous smile. Not the broken, apologetic expression people wear when they are ending something they once loved. Claire smiled, like a woman placing the final card in a game she had already decided belonged to her. The folder stopped beside my wine glass. I looked at her hand first. Perfect manicure. Wedding ring still on. Then I looked at the papers. Petition for dissolution of marriage, her attorney's letterhead. High asset division language on the first page. She had no idea I had moved $500 million out of her reach 7 days earlier. Not hidden. Not stolen. Protected. Every trust, royalty stream, investment account, company share, adaptation right, and property record she thought she could walk through had already been locked behind legal doors she did not know existed. Claire leaned back and said, softly, I think we both knew this was coming? No. Only one of us did. I heard her at 12:12 a.m. I know the exact time because I had reached for my phone on the nightstand before getting up for water. The house was dark, the hardwood cold under my feet, and I was 3 steps from the bedroom door when Claire's voice stopped me, low, controlled. The voice she used when she was managing a room, not speaking to a person. He still doesn't suspect anything, she said from behind the closed office door. I stood completely still. A second voice answered. Too low to understand, Claire said, almost done. Then a pause. He still trusts me with all of it. I walked back to bed without making a sound. 11 minutes later, she came in, slid under the covers, and rested her hand against the back of my neck. Couldn't sleep, she whispered. I kept my breathing slow. And I started planning. You need to know who I am, because this story does not work otherwise. My name is Julian Mercer. I am 45 years old, and I built Astor House Media from a 2-room rights agency I started at 28 with 11 writers, 1 borrowed conference table, and a bank account that made every bad month feel personal. That agency became a production company. The production company became a media group. Astor House now controls 58 published properties, 17 screen adaptations, foreign licensing contracts in 9 markets, and a Brooklyn Heights townhouse I bought outright before I ever met Claire. In a strong year, the company brings in between $38 and $62 million. I say this not to perform wealth. I say it because my wife married a man with a $500 million estate, and in a midnight phone call. The word timing is not casual. It is catastrophic. Claire and I met during a distribution negotiation in Los Angeles. She was advising a private equity group that wanted a piece of Astor House's adaptation pipeline. And unlike most finance people, she understood that stories were not widgets. She knew which writers mattered. She had opinions about limited series pacing, foreign pre-sales, and why certain books died the second someone flattened them into content. That got my attention. For years, I had been the only person in most rooms who could speak both creative language and financial language without translating myself down. Claire made me feel, briefly and dangerously, like someone had finally arrived at the same altitude. We dated for 2 years. I was careful, or I believed I was. My estate attorney, Mara Keene, reviewed the prenuptial agreement 4 separate times before I signed it. Mara had been my friend since college and my lawyer for 13 years. The kind of woman who could make billionaires check their own posture. The prenup was strict. Premarital assets were mine. Company equity, intellectual property, adaptation rights. Property acquired before marriage mine. A week before the wedding, Mara said, she's charming. That sounds like a compliment. Not from me, she said. I married Claire anyway. For almost 3 years, I thought Mara had been overcautious. Then, I heard my wife behind that office door. The next morning, I opened the banking app while Claire was still in the shower. My hands were not shaking from fear. Fear spreads everywhere. This was fury, and fury, when controlled, is narrow enough to become useful. The withdrawals were small. That was the point. $500, $1,000, $1,700, $2,200. Individually, they were nothing inside accounts that processed hundreds of transactions a month. Together, spread across 3 months, they formed a quiet bruise through the history. Claire walked into the kitchen in my robe, hair damp, calm as weather. Something wrong, she asked. A few charges look unfamiliar. Her smile did not move. Small liquidity placements through the subsidiary sweep accounts, she said. I forgot to mention them. Several dozen times her fingers tightened around her coffee mug. You know how cash sweeps work, Julian. I didn't want to bore you with mechanics. Of course, I said. Her shoulders relaxed. Mine did not. 2 nights later, Claire left her phone on the kitchen table. I heard the shower start upstairs. I looked at the phone for 60 seconds. Exactly 60, I counted, because counting kept my hands from moving too fast. Then, I picked it up. One unread message from a number with no contact name. Send him the helium files. Keep him in the dark. Almost done. I scrolled up. Claire's reply had been sent 20 minutes earlier. Not until I serve him. Timing matters. I put the phone back at the same angle. Face down, the top corner aligned with the edge of the table. Claire noticed details, so did I. Then I walked into the powder room, turned on the cold water, and ran it over my wrists until my breathing sounded normal again. Serve him. That was legal language, not emotional language, not a fair language, not the sloppy vocabulary of panic. She was talking about service of papers, divorce papers, a plan already built, already moving, already timed. Whatever the helium files were, they were part of it. Keeping me in the dark was part of it. My trust was part of it. I dried my hands, went upstairs, and got into bed beside her. By then, I had stopped reacting, I had started arranging. At 7:14 the next morning, I called Mara Keene. She answered on the second ring and did not say hello. Tell me everything. That was Mara. No wasted motion, no decorative concern, if my voice sounded like a fire. She reached for water before asking where the smoke came from. I told her about the midnight call, the withdrawals, the phone message, the words serve him, the helium files. Timing matters. Mara went silent for 3 seconds. For her, that was a long time. How much is exposed, she asked. Close to 500 million. Townhouse, royalties, company equity, adaptation rights, investment accounts, trust assets, everything she knows exists. I heard her exhale once. We are not hiding anything, she said. But we are going to separate what is documented as yours, fortify what is yours, and put your estate somewhere your wife cannot stroll through it, carrying a smile and a lawsuit. How fast? We start in an hour. Come to my office. Don't call Claire. Don't change your behavior at home. Then she paused. Julian, until this is done, trust no one inside that house. 72 hours. That was how long it took Mara and her team to build a legal wall around what had always been mine. Mara handled the estate structure herself. Her associate, Elliot Brand, reviewed every corporate access point. Lena Sorrento, a trust specialist Mara trusted more than most judges, rebuilt the protection map line by line. We did not hide marital property. We did not manufacture records. We did not play games with the court. We documented. We moved premarital assets into a protected trust that predated the marriage by explicit records. We transferred the Brooklyn Heights townhouse into the trust's direct ownership through amended title filings. We revoked Claire's limited signing authority on 3 subsidiary accounts. We froze 2 dormant investment accounts she knew about but had not touched yet. We amended royalty collection instructions on 12 properties, so payments routed through Astor House's primary accounts instead of the sweep accounts she had been bleeding. Then we locked the adaptation rights. 14 properties, 3 streaming deals, 2 film options, 1 foreign distribution package worth enough money to make timing a weapon. Every move was reviewed by attorneys, filed where it needed to be filed, and supported by documents that existed before Claire had ever decided I was easier to manage than to love. Each night, I went home. On the second night, she kissed my shoulder in the dark and whispered, "You're my whole life." I watched her reflection in the black window above the headboard. I said nothing. By the third night, every door she knew about was closed. So were 3 she did not. On the third evening, Claire came home with Lebanese takeout and a bottle of Pinot Noir. She set both on the kitchen counter with the relaxed generosity of a woman who believed she was about to win something expensive. Her hair was pinned back. Her earrings were the small gold ones she wore when she wanted to look effortless. "I thought we could have a quiet night," she said. "Perfect," I said. I opened the wine. She unpacked the food. We ate at the island because that was what we did on weeknights when life was normal. Or when one of us was performing normal. Claire talked about a podcast on modern marriage. I listened. I nodded in the right places. I asked one follow-up question because she would have noticed if I didn't. She reached across the counter and squeezed my hand. "I know you've been stressed," she said. Her thumb moved over my knuckles like tenderness was still a language she had the right to use. I smiled. She had no idea the accounts were locked, the titles amended, the rights redirected, and the estate already standing behind glass. She thought the attack was still coming. It had already failed. 4 days after Mara finished, Claire came home too polished for a Tuesday. Charcoal suit, cream blouse, hair smooth enough to look staged. She carried the leather portfolio she only used when she wanted a room to understand she had prepared for it. She did not ask about dinner. She sat across from me at the dining table and placed the portfolio between us. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice had weight in it, not grief. Something rehearsed to sound like grief. She slid the folder across the table. I opened it. Divorce petition. Already filed. Her attorney's name on the letterhead, Bennett Cross, a high-asset dissolution lawyer with a reputation for making complicated ownership structures, looked suspicious under fluorescent light. Claire folded her hands. We've grown apart, Julian. I don't want this to become ugly. I read every page, then I closed the folder and slid it back. Before we go further, I said. There's something you should know. A shadow crossed her face. What? I already moved everything. She blinked once. What does that mean? The townhouse, the royalty streams, the equity, the investment accounts, the adaptation rights on 14 properties, all properly documented, properly filed, properly defended. When? A week ago. The color left her face slowly. You can't do that. I did. Julian, she said. Soft now. The voice she used in bed. It landed like a technique I had already identified. You were right about one thing, I said. Her eyes sharpened. Timing matters. Recognition moved across her face, not guilt. Calculation. You went through my phone. I protected my life. Her jaw tightened. You just made this ugly. No, I said. You made it ugly when you told someone I still trusted you with all of it. 3 days later, Graham Vale walked into my office at Astor House Media, holding a printed page like it had contaminated his hand. He set it on my desk without speaking. An anonymous post on a private industry litigation forum. Founder conceals marital assets through media rights subsidiaries. Is Astor House hiding royalties from court review? Below it, a comment from an account created 6 days earlier. Someone should examine Julian Mercer's transaction records. Claire could not reach the money. Not easily. Not cleanly. Not through the first door she had planned to use. So, she came for my name. In my business, reputation is not decoration. It is infrastructure. Writers trust you with their books. Families trust you with estates. Studios trust you with rights they cannot afford to untangle later. I called Mara before Graham left the office. I saw it, she said. Google alert. Can you trace it? The original poster scrubbed metadata. Reposts are usually less disciplined. Give me until end of day. By 6:00 p.m. Mara had followed 3 reposts, 2 secondary accounts, and 1 payment record from a consulting LLC tied to Claire's business manager. Payment memo: litigation support services. Invoice date 72 hours before the post. Recipient Ronan Sloan. Mara sent me 2 sentences. Document consultant. Asset schedule fabrication. Strategic litigation support. Altered signature work. Not legitimate. I read them twice. Then I called her. How bad? He builds paper, Mara said. Fake histories that survive just long enough to hurt someone. Ronan Sloan, Mara explained, was not a consultant in the way honest people use that word. He built false architecture, fake asset schedules, edited transaction histories, backdated transfer summaries, signature pages that looked authentic until someone with the right software and no patience took them apart. He gives lawyers something to point at, Mara said. Something that looks like evidence before it becomes evidence. I sat in my office and looked at the shelves behind Graham's desk through the glass wall. For 2 weeks, something had been bothering me in a small, shapeless way. A missing object. The kind of absence you notice, dismiss, then notice again. My limited screenplay copy is gone, I said. Mara went quiet. The one from the first Astor House adaptation. The cast-signed edition. My signature is on the inside cover. That would be enough, she said. For what? To lift a clean source signature and place it onto documents you never signed. I looked down at my hands. Claire had not just planned to argue that I moved assets unfairly. She had planned to create a version of me who did it. A paper Julian Mercer with accounts I never opened, transfers I never authorized, and signatures stolen from a memory I used to keep on my shelf. How far along is he? I asked. Far enough that his invoice says completed deliverables. So the documents exist. Yes, Mara said. And if Bennett Cross has them, they may already be headed toward court. The room felt very still. Not quiet. Still. There is a difference. Quiet is absence of sound. Stillness is what happens when your life realizes someone has tried to counterfeit it. Find them, I said. We are, Mara answered. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, flat fluorescent light, old air moving through vents that sounded tired. It had the particular silence of a place where people stop performing because records are being made. Judge Helena Ward presided. 61 years old, 24 years on the bench, patient with attorneys, ruthless with facts. Mara had told me before we entered that Judge Ward had already flagged several inconsistencies in Claire's preliminary documentation. That mattered. Claire sat across from me in a navy dress and pearl earrings. Posture perfect. Face composed. Bennett Cross sat beside her. Legal pad open. Pen ready. Looking like a man who still believed paper was paper, if it arrived on letterhead. Mara sat to my right. She did not whisper reassurance. She did not squeeze my arm. She simply opened the binder in front of her, placed 3 tabs between her fingers, and waited. That was reassurance. The bailiff called the matter. Judge Ward looked over her glasses at both tables. "Let's discuss the documents," she said. Claire's expression did not change. Mine did not either. But for the first time since 12:12 a.m., I felt the floor hold. Mara did not raise her voice. That was the first thing I noticed. In movies, lawyers perform outrage. In real courtrooms, the dangerous ones make outrage unnecessary. She stood, buttoned her jacket, and walked Judge Ward through the documents like she was taking apart a machine. Exhibit A, Mara said, is the asset schedule submitted by Respondent's Counsel and represented as a contemporaneous record of Mr. Mercer's concealed transfers. The screen showed the document Claire's side had submitted. Rows of accounts, transfer dates, dollar amounts, my name in places my name had never been. Mara clicked once. Metadata shows this file was created 11 days before submission on a device registered to Ronan Sloan Consulting. Timestamp 2:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. Bennett cross-shifted in his chair. Mara did not look at him. Exhibit B is the transaction history attached to that schedule. 3 routing numbers listed here correspond to institutional formats discontinued in 2019. 2 of the accounts allegedly receiving funds were not opened until after the dates listed. One institution has provided certification that no account under Mr. Mercer's name, trust, or corporate entities existed during the relevant period. Judge Ward leaned forward slightly. Claire sat very still. Exhibit C, Mara continued, is the signature page, the image enlarged. My signature appeared at the bottom of a document authorizing a transfer I had never seen. It looked like mine at first glance. That was the point. The slant was right. The pressure pattern was almost right. The long loop in the J was there, almost. Mara placed another image beside it. The inside cover of my missing limited screenplay copy. This verified signature was taken from a signed commemorative copy of the first Astor House adaptation. That item disappeared from Mr. Mercer's private study 3 weeks before these documents surfaced. Bennett stood. Your Honor. That is speculation. Mara turned one page. Dr. Annika Vey, forensic document examiner, 18 years of practice, has submitted a report comparing the disputed signature with authenticated samples. Her finding the disputed signature shows compression artifacts consistent with a photographed, handwritten source being digitally flattened and placed onto a typed document. Judge Ward looked at Bennett. Sit down, Mr. Cross. He sat. Mara clicked again. The screen changed to hotel footage. Lobby of the Caldwell Hotel. Timestamp 4:22 p.m. Claire stood near a marble column, wearing the gray coat she told me she had left at the tailor that week. A man approached her, mid-50s, narrow face, dark briefcase. Ronan Sloan. They shook hands. The footage had no sound. It did not need any. Our investigator, Caroline Reyes, confirmed Mr. Sloan's identity through license records and surveillance from the parking garage. 2 hours after this meeting, the consulting LLC tied to Mrs. Mercer's business manager issued payment for litigation support services. Mara paused, not for drama, for precision. The court is being asked to rely on documents created by a known fabrication consultant, containing impossible routing data, bearing a digitally manipulated signature sourced from stolen personal property. After an in-person meeting between Mrs. Mercer and that consultant, for the first time, Claire looked at me. Not sadly, not apologetically. Angry, rawly, visibly angry. The woman who had smiled across my dining table was gone. The woman who had touched the back of my neck and whispered, "Couldn't sleep," was gone too. What remained was someone whose plan had been opened in public and laid flat under fluorescent light. I did not smile. I did not move. I kept my hands folded on the table and watched the paper version of me burn. Judge Ward set down her pen. The sound was small, but every person in the room seemed to hear it. She looked first at Bennett Cross, then at Claire, then down at the documents in front of her. The financial materials submitted by respondent contain inconsistencies this court cannot reasonably attribute to clerical error, she said. The timestamps contradict the timeline offered. The routing numbers contradict institutional records. The disputed signature has been identified by a forensic examiner as showing characteristics of digital manipulation. Bennett stood halfway. Your Honor. Judge Ward lifted one finger. You will have an opportunity to preserve your objection, Mr. Cross. I am not finished. He sat down slowly. The judge turned her attention to Claire. Litigation is a serious instrument, Mrs. Mercer. It is not a tool for constructing leverage from material that does not tell the truth. Claire's face held. Barely. I make no criminal finding today, Judge Ward continued. That is not the role of this proceeding. But I know what this record shows. She read the ruling with the calm precision of someone placing weight exactly where it belonged. Claire's claims were denied in their entirety. My trust documentation was recognized as properly established and supported by records predating the marriage. The disputed asset schedules were excluded. Legal fees were awarded against Claire. Then Judge Ward added the part that made Bennett close his eyes. The submitted exhibits will be referred to the district attorney's office for review of potential document fraud. No one gasped. Real consequences do not always arrive loudly. Sometimes they land as one sentence in a courtroom. And every future a person planned begins narrowing at once. Outside the courtroom, the marble corridor smelled like old stone and central heating. Claire approached me before Mara could stop her. Mara stepped forward. I shook my head once. Let her speak. Claire stood in front of me with her pearl earrings still on. Her posture reassembled, but imperfect now. One strand of hair had come loose near her temple. Her lipstick looked too bright against the color gone from her face. For a second, I thought she might apologize. That was still the stupidest part of me. Apparently, still expecting a human sentence from someone who had tried to counterfeit my life. Instead, she looked at me and said, flatly, "You were never supposed to be this hard." Not angry, not even loud, just hollow. And that sentence explained the entire marriage. Claire had not married me. She had married the version of me she invented. Rich, busy, grateful for attention, too tired to check, too trusting to verify, too disciplined to make a scene. She had planned around that man carefully. She had never looked at the one standing there. I walked away without answering. Everything that needed to be said had already been entered into evidence. Ronan Sloan's office address turned out to be a mail drop above a tax preparation storefront in Queens. Caroline Reyes confirmed it the same afternoon the ruling came down. His phone had already been disconnected. His website disappeared sometime between the morning hearing and lunch. By evening, the professional biography that had called him a litigation documentation specialist existed only in cached fragments. But Mara was already ahead of him. She found Derek Ames, a former contractor who had worked with Sloan on 3 previous matters involving fabricated asset schedules. When Caroline explained what was happening, Derek apparently decided that signing an affidavit was healthier than becoming a footnote in Claire Mercer's document fraud investigation. His affidavit arrived the following Tuesday. It described the process in detail: source signatures photographed from personal items, compression cleaning, artificial pressure recreation, fabricated account histories built from partial bank templates, metadata scrubbed only after draft approval. Derek confirmed that Sloan had prepared materials for the Mercer matter. That phrase stayed with me. The Mercer matter. My marriage reduced to a file name inside a fraud workflow. The district attorney's office opened a formal investigation within 2 weeks. Bennett Cross filed a motion to withdraw from representing Claire 3 days later. It was granted. Claire retained new counsel and filed an appeal at significant expense. 4 months later, it was denied in a ruling that took 11 minutes to read into the record. Judge Ward's findings stood. So did Derek Ames's affidavit. So did every document Mara had filed before Claire ever smiled across my dining table. The townhouse is still mine. The royalties still flow into the correct accounts. The adaptation rights on 14 properties still belong to Astor House Media. The investment accounts Claire believed were exposed are documented, protected, and reviewed on a schedule Mara now describes as irritating but necessary. She keeps updated copies of every trust instrument, title amendment, royalty instruction, equity record, and board authorization in a redundant system that exists in 3 places and makes no apologies for paranoia. Neither do I. People like to imagine security as a locked door. It is not. Security is maintenance. It is review. It is assuming that anything worth protecting will eventually attract someone willing to test the edges of it. Claire tested mine from inside my own house. That part still matters. But she did not get the company. She did not get the townhouse. She did not get to turn forged paper into truth just because it wore my signature well enough at first glance. The work of protecting something is never fully finished. I understand that now. Not as fear, as discipline. I am not going to pretend I walked out of that courtroom entirely undamaged. That would be another kind of lie. 3 years is a long time to build a life beside someone who is building a weapon inside it. There is grief in that which has nothing to do with money. Grief for ordinary dinners, for half-asleep conversations, for the specific trust it takes to let someone touch the back of your neck in the dark and believe tenderness is still tenderness. I grieved that. I still do. Sometimes. But grief does not require surrender. That is what I learned standing barefoot on cold hardwood at 12:12 a.m. Listening to my wife say, I still trusted her with all of it. I grieved and called Mara. I grieved and moved documents. I grieved and sat in court, while the counterfeit version of my life was dismantled, exhibit by exhibit. Being hurt did not make me helpless. Being betrayed did not make me stupid. Loving someone once did not obligate me to let them finish destroying me. Claire was wrong about the money. She was wrong about the documents, mostly. She was wrong about me. The trust had been somewhere else long before she learned it. So had I. If this story held your attention, consider subscribing for more stories about betrayal, boundaries, and the quiet moment people finally take their lives back.